Welcome to the deep dive. We hear it all the time, right? It's not what you know, but who you know.
Yeah, that old chestnut.
Or, maybe you've always thought that being influential, really making an impact, just means being super popular, like the person with the most friends.
Life of the party, center of attention.
Exactly. It feels intuitive, doesn't it? Just
Yeah.
build this huge network, loads of connections, and boom, success follows. Socially, professionally, whatever.
Right. What if that's not quite right? What if that common wisdom is missing something crucial?
What if the secret to actually climbing the social ladder, to being truly influential is, well, more complex, maybe even strategic, something most of us don't even think about?
That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. This deep dive, it really challenges that popular idea head on.
Okay.
We're diving into some pretty fascinating research on social networks. It's just the people with real clout aren't just the ones with a million direct friends. Instead, they seem to have this unique, you could almost call this social superpower.
A superpower? Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's not just charisma, not just being outgoing. It's this uncanny ability they have to accurately sort of map their social world.
Map it. Like, understand the connections.
Yeah, but more than that, it's about seeing the hidden communities, the cliques, the whole underlying structure of the network.
Okay. And this isn't just someone's theory.
No, not at all. This is grounded in some solid research. We're mainly looking at an insightful article from Brown University by Gretchen Schraft,
Right.
which breaks down the findings, and, crucially, the original research paper itself, published in Science Advances.
Ah, the peer-reviewed stuff.
Exactly. By Isabella Aslaris, Jae Young Sun, Alice Shia, and Oriel Feldman-Hall. She's an associate professor over at Brown.
Got it. So our mission today is what? To really get into the nitty-gritty of this study.
Pretty much. We want to unpack the details, understand the, frankly, surprising findings, and figure out what it really means to be influential in a social network. Might make you rethink a few things.
I'm ready. Where do we start? How do we make this concrete?
Let's start with the real-world setting the researchers picked. It makes it super relatable. Imagine this. First-year undergrads. Just arrived at Brown University.
Okay, yeah, total fresh start.
Exactly. Most of them know absolutely no one, maybe a couple of faces from high school, but basically it's a blank social slate, a real tabula rasa.
Right, I remember that feeling. Exciting, but also kind of terrifying.
Totally. And then, just watch, over a few months, this incredibly complex social world just blossoms around them.
Friendships form, groups emerge.
Cliques solidify, connections are made, some fall apart, and this sort of natural hierarchy starts to form. Who's connected, who's influential.
It's like watching a mini society build itself from scratch.
Precisely. And that's why it was such a perfect setup for the researchers. It's a rare chance to see a social network being built literally from the ground up.
Instead of just studying one that's already existed for years.
Right. You get to track its growth, see how influence actually emerges organically right from the very beginning. It's like a living lab.
Okay, so let's talk about that influence. Because the research, you said, challenges our basic assumptions about social success. We think popular equals influential.
That's the common belief, yeah. The person with the most friends, the biggest circle, must be the most influential.
But this research says, not so fast.
Exactly. The starting point here, and this is where it gets really interesting, is that influence isn't just about popularity. It's not just the sheer number of friends you rack up.
It's something else.
Something more subtle, yeah. Oriel Feldman-Hall put it really well. She said people vary, like a lot, in how well they actually understand the structure of their own communities.
Some people are just better at reading the room socially.
Kind of, but it's deeper than that. Her key point, the big reveal from their work, is that the people who are really good at mapping the network, figuring out who belongs to which group, which clique, those are the ones who eventually become the most influential.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just connecting, it's understanding the connection.
Exactly. It's a shift from just quantity of friends to the quality of your social insight.
So we need to be clear on terms. Influence versus friend count. How did the study define these? Let's start with the easy one, friend count.
Right. What we'd normally call friend count in network science, that's called degree centrality.
Okay.
Super simple. Just the total number of direct friends or connections someone has. 10 friends means a degree centrality of 10.
Easy enough, intuitive. That's what we usually mean by popular.
Yep. But, and this is the kicker, the research shows pretty clearly that while it measures popularity, It's not the main thing driving actual influence,
Huh.
especially not in a network that's still changing and evolving.
Okay, so what is the main driver then? What's this other kind of influence?
That's where they bring in eigenvector centrality, and this is really the core concept we need to get.
Eigenvector centrality. Sounds fancy.
It is a bit more complex, but the idea is powerful. It's not just about your friends, it's about how well connected your friends are.
Okay. So if my friends know lots of other people.
Exactly. Imagine two people, Alex and Brenda. Both have 6 friends. Same degree centrality, right?
Right. 6 friends each.
But Alex's 6 friends are kind of isolated. They mostly just know Alex, not many others in the wider network. Alex's eigenvector centrality, their influence would be pretty low.
Okay.
Now, Brenda also has 6 friends, but her friends are social hums themselves. They're super connected, plugged into lots of different groups.
So Brenda's connected to the connectors.
Precisely. Even with the same number of direct friends, Brenda's eigenvector centrality, her influence, would be way higher. It's about the quality and reach of your network, amplified by the connections of your connections. Is that ripple effect?
That makes a lot of sense visually. Like one person's connections just end while the others branch out into this dense web.
Exactly. The paper actually has a figure showing this. 2 nodes, same number of direct lines out. But one leads to dead ends, socially speaking. The other leads to nodes that are themselves buzzing with connections. Big difference in influence, even with the same friend count.
And does this kind of influence actually, like, do anything? What are the benefits?
Oh, absolutely. Isabella Aslaris, another author, points out the benefits are really tangible. It's not just about being popular.
Okay, like what?
Well, people with high eigenvector centrality, the truly influential ones, they tend to be seen more positively by others. They can actually help bring about positive outcomes for people in their network, maybe connecting them, helping them out. And crucially, they're super effective at spreading information. They're like key nodes in the communication flow.
That sounds useful beyond just social climbing.
Totally. As Lyris mentions real-world uses, think about public health campaigns, using influential people to spread health info effectively.
Yeah, okay.
Or using similar ideas to tackle bullying in schools, promote financial literacy, or even encourage sustainable habits in a community. Understanding this deeper influence has real value.
Okay, so how did they actually measure all this? Back to the Brown University study. Why first-year students again?
Right, the setting was key. Feldman Hall explained it perfectly. When students arrive on campus, they have no friends. Total reset. But by winter break, they have a rich social world.
Where? Friendships have formed, maybe some have dissolved.
Exactly. So you get this rare chance to see a network form almost from nothing. It's like watching evolution in fast forward, socially speaking.
Natural experiment.
Pretty much. They focus specifically on the class of 2026, living in 3 first-year dorms. So it was a contained, evolving environment, perfect for tracking things closely.
And it wasn't just a one-off look.
No, that's crucial. It was longitudinal. They tracked these students across the whole academic year.
How often?
6 times. They had about 200 students who opted in, and they checked in with them regularly.
And what did they ask them? Just who their friends were?
That was part of it. They used friendship surveys. Students identified who they were friends with within that study group. That let the researchers build these evolving maps, these graphs of the social network over time. See who connected with whom and when.
Okay, that gives you the network structure. But how did they measure that knowledge of the network you mentioned earlier, the mapping superpower?
This was the really clever part.
Yeah.
They used something called the network knowledge task.
Network knowledge test.
Here, they showed students pairs of photos of other students in the study, people they didn't necessarily know.
Okay.
And they asked them, are these 2 people friends?
Whoa, so you're guessing about connections between other people, potentially strangers.
Exactly. It wasn't about your friends. It was about your perception of others' relationships. It was designed specifically to measure how well they understood the network beyond their own immediate circle, a direct probe into their map of the wider social world.
That's smart. Okay, so what did they find happening in this network over the year? Was it stable?
Not at first. Especially in the fall semester, they described it as very much in flux.
Lots of change.
Yeah, friendships forming super fast, but also dissolving quickly, like a whirlwind. Group boundaries were fuzzy.
Since everyone's trying to find their footing.
Right. But then, crucially, things started to stabilize by the spring semester. The network settled down, friendships became more established, the structure got clearer.
So chaotic beginning, then stabilization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that dynamic from chaos to stability was absolutely key to their findings about influence and knowledge.
Yeah.
It let them see what mattered at different stages.
Okay, I'm ready for the findings. You said there was a surprising truth here, something that flips the script.
Yes. Get ready for this, because it really challenges that popularity equals influence idea. They found a huge difference in how influence, that eigenvector centrality, and simple friend count, degree centrality, behaved over the year.
Different how?
Okay, so remember influence, being connected to connected people.
Yeah.
Most of the students who were highly influential in the fall, those early social stars, they didn't hold on to those top spots by the spring.
Wait, really? The early influencers mostly weren't the later influencers.
Incredible, right? By the time the network settled down in the spring, a completely different group of students held something like 90% of the top 20 most influential positions.
Wow. So influence is slippery. It changes.
Highly changeable. It's dynamic. It evolves as the network matures. Early influence, in this setting at least, was often fleeting.
That's fascinating. So you can't just get popular early and expect to stay influential?
This seems not. But here's the contrast. Friend count. Degree centrality.
What did that? Was that unstable too?
Nope. That was remarkably stable. Students who had the most friends in the fall generally still had the most friends in the spring.
Ah, so if you were a social butterfly early on, you probably stayed one?
Pretty much. Popularity, in terms of just numbers, was much more consistent over time.
Okay, so putting that together. Making lots of friends early makes you popular, and you probably stay popular, but it doesn't guarantee you'll become or stay influential.
That's the core takeaway. You can have a ton of direct connections, be really well liked, but if that popularity isn't translating into that deeper structural influence captured by eigenvector centrality, it might not last as the network solidifies.
So true. Lasting influence needs something more than just numbers.
It needs that understanding, that social superpower we talked about.
Which brings us back to the types of knowledge. The researchers didn't just say knowledge, right? They broke it down.
Exactly. They suspected that knowing the network structure, its topology, was key. But they realized knowledge isn't just one thing. So they distinguished between two critical types.
Okay, what are they?
First, there's micro-level knowledge. Think of this as the really specific, detailed stuff.
Like knowing individuals.
Knowing specific relationships. Pairwise connections. Is Sarah friends with Tom? Does Alex know Brenda? It's the granular detail, knowing every link in the chain.
Okay, micro level is the specific friendships. What's the other type?
That's meso-level knowledge. This is more abstract, the bigger picture.
Seeing the forest, not just the trees.
Exactly that analogy. Instead of individual friendships, it's understanding the broader structure. The communities, the cliques, the neighborhoods within the social network. Groups where people are more connected to each other than to outsiders.
So less is Sarah friends with Tom, and more, are Sarah and Tom part of the same social circle?
Precisely. It's grasping those underlying clusters and groupings, even if you don't know every single person in them.
And they could measure both of these from that network knowledge task, the guessing game.
Yeah, they used some sophisticated stats. Basically figured out if someone's guesses about friendships between others were driven more by knowing actual specific friendships, micro level, or by knowing if those two people belong to the same community, meso level.
Clever. And these two things aren't the same, right? You can be friends with someone outside your group or in the same group, but not direct friends.
Totally distinct.
Yeah.
Which highlights why you need both perspectives, potentially, to really understand the complex social map.
Okay, so micro is the details, meso is the big picture. Now, the big reveal. Which one mattered for becoming influential? This is the social superpower, right?
This is it, the absolute key finding, the real aha moment. Early meso-level knowledge predicts rising influence.
The big picture knowledge early on?
That's the one. The more a student showed they understood the underlying community structure, those latent groups, back in the fall when everything was chaotic, the more likely they were to climb the ranks and become genuinely influential by the spring when things had settled.
Wow. And this was a strong effect.
Statistically very strong, yeah.
Yeah.
And importantly, it held up even when they controlled for other things.
Like what? Like just being outgoing?
Exactly. They controlled for extroversion and even how many friends the person already had in the fall.
So it wasn't just the popular kids or the extroverts who became influential?
No. It suggests that this ability to perceive the group structure early on was a unique predictor, separate from just being generally sociable or already having connections. It was about the understanding.
That is huge. What about the micro-level knowledge? Knowing the specific friendships, did that predict influence?
Interestingly, no. Not for rising influence over time, especially once they accounted for those other factors like initial popularity.
So knowing all the little details early on wasn't the key to climbing the ladder.
It seems not. The superpower, especially in that initial unstable phase, was having that bird's eye view, grasping the communities.
Okay, so for anyone listening, if you're in a new situation, a new job, new town, focus on figuring out the groups first. The cliques, the teams.
That's what this suggests. Rather than trying to meet absolutely everyone or memorize every single connection, try to get a feel for the larger social topography first. Who hangs out with whom? What are the main clusters?
See the forest before counting the trees.
Exactly. That seems to be the strategic advantage early on for navigating the chaos and positioning yourself effectively.
This also helps make sense of older research, maybe. You mentioned some studies linked knowing specific friendships to social advantage.
Right. Previous studies, often just snapshots in time, cross-sectional, did find that accurate micro-level knowledge correlated with current social benefits, but usually in stable networks.
Ah, okay. So the timing matters.
Hugely. This Brown study, being longitudinal, tracking over time, clarifies things beautifully. It shows the process.
So let's break down that process again. Fall semester, networks chaotic.
In the fall, neither micro nor meso knowledge was strongly linked to current influence. Actually, there was even a slight trend for people with higher early influence to have slightly worse knowledge.
Really? Why would that be?
Well, it supports the idea that accuracy leads to advantage, not the other way around. Maybe the early popular people were too busy making friends to map the network. Or maybe they didn't need to map it as carefully yet. But it suggests the knowledge comes first, then the influence, especially early on.
Okay. But then things stabilize by spring.
And the picture flips. Once the network settled down in the spring, accurate micro-level knowledge, knowing the specific, established friendships, did strongly predict who was currently influential.
So the details matter later.
Exactly. Once the structure is clear, knowing the precise connections within that structure becomes critical for navigating it effectively and maintaining influence. Interestingly, meso-level knowledge wasn't strongly linked to current influence anymore at that later stage.
So its main job was predicting the rise in influence, but not necessarily maintaining it once stable.
That seems to be the pattern they found, which leads to the idea of the full package.
Meaning?
Who were the most influential people overall at the very end? The study found it was the individuals who had both things going for them.
Both types of knowledge.
Yes. Accurate meso-level knowledge, big picture, back in the fall when things were forming, and accurate micro-level knowledge, specific friendships, in the spring once things had stabilized. That combination was the strongest predictor of ending up highly influential.
So it really is a two-stage process, like needing different tools at different times.
Perfectly put. First, you need the strategic overview, the blueprint, when the structure's emerging. Then, once it's built, you need the detailed knowledge of the specific connections, the wiring diagram, to operate effectively within it. It's about adapting your social intelligence.
Why, though? Why is that big picture meso-level view so powerful early on? What's the advantage?
It seems to come down to basic cognitive efficiency. Think about it, even in a group of just 200 people, the number of possible friendships, pairs of people, is huge.
Yeah, it explodes pretty quickly.
Trying to track every single one, who's friends, who isn't. It's a massive cognitive load, a formidable cognitive challenge, as the paper puts it.
It's like trying to memorize an entire phone book instead of just knowing the area codes or neighborhoods.
Exactly. Meso-level knowledge is like having the area codes. It's an efficient, compressed representation of the network. You see the overall structure without needing to store every single detail.
It simplifies things. Less brain power needed.
Right. And that efficiency does more than just save effort. It helps you make inferences. If you understand the main groups, you can make pretty good guesses about how information might flow. You can predict relationships you haven't even seen, like, oh, they're both in the drama club clique, they probably know each other. You can anticipate new connections forming. It allows for, as they say, flexible generalization beyond the immediate here and now. You can navigate even unfamiliar parts of the network more effectively because you have a mental map of the overall territory.
That makes sense, especially when things are changing fast.
Absolutely. And this ties back to that malleability of influence we saw. Remember how eigenvector centrality changed a lot, but degree centrality, friend count, was stable.
Yeah.
It reinforces that influence isn't just about direct ties. It's about your position in the broader flow, including those crucial indirect connections. Being linked to well-connected people, even distantly, boosts your influence. Eigenvector centrality captures that beautifully. It's like leveraging the network of your network.
So this study really reframes social success. It's not just who you know.
It adds a huge layer. What you know about who knows whom and which groups they belong to. Your cognitive map of the network actively shapes your position within it. It's active understanding, not just passive collecting of contacts.
And it really shows the value of studying things over time, doesn't it? That longitudinal approach.
Absolutely essential here. It untangled things that a single snapshot couldn't. It showed directionality that knowledge seems to precede the rise in influence. And it highlights that the rules for social success might differ depending on whether a network is new and messy or established and stable. Social intelligence adapts.
So what are the big questions left open? Where does the research go next? Generalizability must be one. Does this apply outside of college freshmen?
That's a huge one. Does this hold for adults in workplaces, community groups, online networks, different cultures? This was a very specific setting, a brand new network forming among young adults. We need to see how these dynamics play out elsewhere.
And what about networks that aren't brand new but go through changes, like a company merger or a key person leaving a friend group?
Great question. The paper touches on this. While totally new networks are rare for adults, shifts in stability within existing networks are common. How do people adapt their social mapping then? Does meso-level knowledge become critical again during periods of upheaval? That's a really interesting avenue.
And the how as well, right? How exactly does this knowledge translate into influence, the mechanism?
Yes, the precise mechanism. They controlled for extroversion, but are there other factors? Maybe where you live in the dorm gives you better info and more chances to connect, or sharing specific classes.
Things that give both knowledge and opportunity.
Exactly. Natural field studies like this are amazing, but they can't control everything. Future work could look at specific behaviors linked to network knowledge, like do people high in meso-knowledge act as brokers more often? Do they resolve conflicts? That could help pin down the how.
Wow. Okay, what a journey through this research. So the big takeaway, it's not just popularity.
Definitely not. Real, lasting influence, especially when climbing the social ladder in a new or changing environment, seems to hinge on having this sophisticated, evolving understanding of your social world.
It's that social superpower.
Right. Leveraging that initial bird's eye meso-level view of the communities when things are fluid. And then as things settle, refining it with the micro-level details, the specific relationships.
Strategy and tactics almost. Big picture first, then the details.
That seems to be the winning combo. It's about dynamic social intelligence.
So a final thought for everyone listening. How could you maybe use this social mapping superpower yourself?
Yeah, think about it. Whether you're starting a new job, moving to a new place, joining a club, or even just looking at your current circles with fresh eyes.
Maybe try actively looking for the bigger structures first.
Instead of just collecting contacts, try to discern the groups. Who are the main clusters? The teams, the cliques? What's the underlying structure here?
And then later, focus on the specific links within those groups.
Right. As things become clearer, consciously work on understanding those direct connections.
Yeah.
Who are the key players within those communities?
Yeah.
How might shifting your focus like that, actively mapping the forest and the trees, change how you navigate your own social world? How might it boost your own influence?
Something to definitely mull over. It might just be the hidden advantage you need.